What's up, Dali?
Weather is nice. It's a little brisk today, but I like the cold myself. It's sunny and bright and cool.
So where is that?
Echo Park is just a little bit north and west of downtown Los Angeles. If I were to get to the center of downtown, that would be about an hour's walk. I don't tell you how long it would take to drive because, well, it's only 5 kilometers or so, about 3 miles. The traffic around here makes the car time kind of slow. Hey there.
All right.
I see you.
Cool. I'm here.
Looks like the stack of the camera has the speaking function. There you go. That's at the right stack level. How you doing, Dio?
Yeah. Good. I see a delay between me speaking and with 2 cameras. I guess that's normal. Yeah. Sorry. I've never been live before.
Yeah.
So what
latency in all the steps.
Yeah. What should we? I don't know. Help me come up with a claim, maybe.
Sure. Let's see. Claims. I think I have a list of things that poke claims into place. Let me grab that. Oh, it's not in this channel. Hold on. It's up in the where we usually do our practice in the SE. Yes, indeed. We're very open to suggestions. I'm going to grab a list of topics. And back to the live show text. Here we go. List of topics and then paste. Paste? Maybe paste? Paste. Not paste? Okay, there we go. Oh, and I pasted it twice. Oh no. So I'm going to start reading off this list, and stop me when anything triggers an idea that you'd like to talk about.
What about supernatural? I mean, I've no.
Do you have any opinions for or against supernatural? I think we have a Discord freeze. Ah, there you go. Now I hear you again. So what about supernatural? Do you have opinions for or against it? Maybe? Do you think there's something about things that are supernatural? Okay.
No, I don't think I have knowledge supernatural. Oh, I mean...
Okay.
It depends what you mean by supernatural, but like supernatural?
Sure. I've got a very long list here. So pick anything that actually triggers an idea. Religion, astrology, psychics, pseudoscience, philosophy, freedom of speech, political regimes, educational system, medicine, ecology. Oh, yes.
Okay, so I think let's try to narrow it down. I don't mind doing freedom of speech or veganism or let's pick one more. Let's pick traditions.
Okay, traditions.
So you pick one.
Do you have a claim about those, or would you like me to steal man a claim?
Well,
sure,
Yeah, I'm sure. I think I can come up with fun claims for all three. Sorry, I think we're on a lag here. We have a big
Sure.
delay.
Yes, we have a big lag, so we'll just be patient with each other on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so is this a question where you're asking me to choose between freedom of speech, traditions, and sorry, what was the third one?
Veganism.
Veganism. Okay. So
You're big for me. I think I can make interesting claims for those three.
Okay, I'm going to use a 6-sided dice. This is a very cute little 6-sided dice, and I will use modulus 3 logic. So 5, so 2, and that would be the second one, and that would be traditions. Tell me what you think about tradition or traditions.
So I'm under the impression that traditions are a sort of way that past cultures have embedded practical knowledge into it's the way they have passed on practical knowledge to the rest of us, right? So
okay,
basically, let's say that before you try to say a tradition is invalid or not good, before you try to replace a tradition, you should first try to figure out its function.
Okay.
And almost all tradition plays a function, and you should always be worried about what the function is. And usually, we can't reconstruct a function rationally. We have to, it's very difficult to reconstruct it rationally.
Okay. It's difficult to reconstruct the reasons for a tradition rationally? That's what you're saying?
Not the reasons, the effects.
Okay, so it's difficult for us to predict the effects of what a tradition does, or if we were to drop a tradition knowing what the effects would be for in dropping that, the knock-on effects wouldn't be obvious. Period.
Let's take an example. Maybe to clear with an example. So you might say that maybe going to church isn't necessary. Maybe we can have communal bonding by going on Discord and chatting on Discord every day, and then everybody will have a strong community like that. But in practice, it's very hard to get every single person in a single geographical area to do the same activity. So you need some kind of activity that is general enough and doesn't commit you to to a specific personality or character. And the only way to, church is one of those things that where you have a more diverse, kind of people who come in, and it's very hard to replicate that in any other kind of tradition. So the effect here is communal bonding, and it's very hard to. Yeah.
Okay, so church has a wider draw, a more diverse draw than like the average non-church activity. So the benefits of church are such that you get a community bonding that's difficult to get if the thing you're bonding around is specialized, like bowling league, or let's all go watch a baseball game, or maybe we'll do square dancing. Not in COVID, we can't do square dancing. We'll have to do square dancing at a distance. I don't think that works. I don't think I can do square dancing without touching people. Yep. Okay, so traditions are this practical. So it's almost I've got two claims floating here. One is that traditions are the practical knowledge brought by prior generations, and it's not easy to necessarily replace them because, well, I guess they've been sort of selected for. They really worked. That's why they stayed around, and so they get like evolved and optimized, maybe.
Yes.
And in the case, like you're saying, with church, because church has such a wide, it throws such a wide net. It gathers everybody in who's willing to at least conform to the belief system, which is usually pretty easy if the church isn't real picky. If you could just be not antisocial, you probably could get away with church. Okay. Let's see. You gave the example of church. Do you have any other examples of traditions that are hard to replace?
Well, I'm personally, like fasting, I would say, is one of those traditions, which is, it's very easy to tell someone, hey, look, if you fast, it'll be good for your health. But if you try and give them some kind of ulterior motivation in like the way the church does, then you get much more compliance with fasting. So that's one other thing. I mean, I would probably say put astrology in there.
Okay. Astrology, all right.
So, I mean, anyway, it's I think of it as people often have a sort of indecisiveness. Like they think, should I do this? Should I do that? What day should I go to the doctor or whatever? Or how am I going to meet the one? And astrology has a kind of, well, in game theory, you would call it a correlated equilibrium. So that means that by having a signal by having a signal, you can correlate your activity to that signal, and it's much easier to decide what to do.
Sure. Yeah. Like right around here at the top of the hour, you will hear a chime. Everybody knows the top of the hour. You could coordinate and say, meet me at the park, and when the chime sounds 2, I'll meet you at the spot. Something like that. You could have that kind of coordination.
It's also psychological.
So,
there's 2 effects. Like, because there's maybe you don't know like how to meet people, and you don't know where to go to find your boyfriend, and lucky you, the astrology book says go to the bar by the beach and you'll meet your new whatever mate. So then it's more specific. You're not overwhelmed with choice, kind of thing.
Right. Okay. So it gives it, even if it's not a reasonable choice because it's sort of random or generalized or something, it's still useful because it gives you a direction to try. Is that what I hear for astrology? Okay. So question from the audience, if a tradition has no function for you, but great function for others, should you respect this tradition?
Yes, you should respect it anyway. It's not. That's like saying, I don't like, I don't like academia, but others really like it. Should I respect academia? Yes, you should respect. It's not because you don't like it that you should not respect it, right?
So, are ideas worthy of respect depending on how many people they're useful for?
I don't know about I don't know if it's a number of people.
Okay.
It's more about you have to try and infer what the function of the idea is, right? So if you can't infer it, it's probably best to be risk averse.
Okay. I'm reminded of a legal story where somebody comes to the local magistrate and says, we have this gate that crosses this path, and it's been there for longer than I've been alive, and it's a pain, and I can't see any reason why it's there. I'd like you to allow me to remove it. And the magistrate says, no, if you can't think of why it's there, I especially will not allow you to remove it. If you could understand why it was there and tell us, then we could totally have a conversation about whether it's a good idea. But if you're ignorant of why it's there in the first place, we can't even begin to discuss removing it. I think this kind of goes with what you're saying regarding tradition. So is the ultra wide shot?
Exactly.
No. Okay. We'll deal with that when I'm done talking to Dio. Okay. So what is up with the camera? We'll figure out what's going on with the wide shot afterwards. Go do the troubleshooting. I think my camera went to rainbow barf. That happens some of the time. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, good. So the stream might be showing me things different than what I'm seeing. I'm seeing what's actually going on the main 4 streams. You might be seeing something different in the Discord. You might see a little more of the sausage being made for important technical reasons. Yes, all is well. Is it easy to show the claim text across the bottom of this scene? I have it turned on, but I don't see it. If that's difficult, don't worry about it. Okay, so we have these traditions, and they are something like wisdom from the past. If there was a tradition whose function we didn't understand, what would be the means? What would be the method whereby I would test to see whether we should retain it?
The method to see whether you could retain it. I mean, you could just.
Case of the gate. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I think we'll go ahead. I think maybe we have a very big lag, and I'm not sure. Maybe we should.
I was just saying, like in the case of the gate, like in the legal example, the way you could test what was going on is to observe the gate for a long time and see what's going on, and perhaps to open the gate and see if something different changes. If suddenly now the cows escape, or something like that, before you remove the gate, you could just open it and have somebody monitor. That might be a way to figure out whether the gate being there was a good idea. I mean, I suppose in the case of a tradition, you might look for people who were not following the tradition, or groups or selected areas where they're not following the tradition, and then figure out how it's different for them. That's the first place I'm going. But what sort of ways could we figure out whether a tradition has knock-on effects that we'd want to keep it?
What are the ways we can figure out if tradition has knock-on effects? Well, simplest way is like seeing, going there and studying the people and seeing anthropologically what is happening. You can usually come up with a theory about why something is there, right? I mean, you can probably link I don't know, fasting to some kind of health benefit, or you can link it to some kind of sale season, a season where there's not much to hunt, or you can link it to maybe sometimes the nature needs a month where you don't hunt things because it'll allow it to grow, and then through tradition you found out that the tribes which fasted survived better because they didn't destroy their environment around them, because they gave it that extra 2 months to get back on things like that. So there's lots of ways to figure it out, but it's hard to do a specific test. A test usually involves changing only one thing, and a lot of these traditions, like
Yeah.
if you change one thing, you're changing a lot of other things at the same time, right? So it's very hard to, it's not like drugs where you can give them a placebo and a real thing and then say, well, what is the effect?
Right.
If you change one thing, it might.
Hard to change just a little part of it. Yeah. I mean, if you had a ritual tradition where, I suppose you could just change one aspect of the ritual. You could test whether your ritual is to go out on Friday night and get drunk. If you went out on Friday night and went to the same places but drank less, you could compare it, or drank more, or stayed home and drank. You could maybe change one variable at a time and figure some of that out. Of course, a lot of these traditions it seems like what I'm hearing is that these traditions have a social level effect, more than just the effect on the individual. The fasting is the effect on the individual, but the effect on how that influences hunting is the counterexample. Maybe it's not a counterexample.
Yeah, it can have numerous levels of influence, right?
We're doing free water and free speech. You can have either one. You can only pick one. I'm kidding. You can have both. I'm perverse and make people think about what I'm saying by saying it wrong. Okay, so how careful should we be in changing traditions? Is it okay if we just pick and choose our traditions, throw out the ones that we don't like, and try it? Is that valid, reasonable trying, or is that dangerous?
I think we should look a lot at the payoff space, right? Like, there's a lot of, especially in SE, there's a lot of talk about probability, like likelihood that it's true, but I think that comes second to the payoff. Like, we should look at what the possible consequences of this thing are, and then because if it's something we see that it's worth tinkering with, we should tinker with it. But if it's not worth tinkering with, then like engineering is a very nice example of something that very rarely, like, it's very narrow. Like, before it took 2 hours to do something, now it takes an hour to do something, and as long as if the whatever the production process was like for that something was like a communal process, this might be bad anyway. But if it was like something you were doing individually, then you can probably infer that it's less costly. So the narrower your kind of adaptation, the better. Kind of. So it has to be like what Popper calls piecemeal engineering.
Okay. So I'm hearing you say that when we're addressing traditions, if we can change it the smallest amount when we test, if we can do the baby steps, that's better choice. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And more. So I'm not sure if that answered the question actually, because you asked me. What was the question?
Interesting. Yeah. I was saying, would it be okay for individuals to just throw off traditions and be very innovative and maybe just try a bunch of new things? Is that dangerous to society? Is it dangerous to the rest of us if people are just trying things all on their own?
Well, exactly. So I remember the example I wanted to give. So for example, we want to say we have a tradition being against, being anti-genocide. And then you're like, okay, well, should we tinker with this tradition? And I'm like, okay, well, before tinkering with this tradition, why don't we try and look what are the possible consequences of tinkering with this tradition? And then you're like, well, maybe there's not that much to gain. So why don't we just not tinker with this and go somewhere else? And it's just always try to compute.
Thankfully, we have a whole bunch of natural experiments in history on that topic. We have a bunch of examples of genocide to learn why it's unpopular, why it should be not done. Yeah.
So, but the
Yeah.
procedure should be like this. I think it's usually easier to get an idea of the payoff space rather than
Yes.
an idea about the probability space. So, because
Hold on.
probability space is about, so go ahead.
Go ahead. I thought she was asking me a question. She just came over to look at something.
All I'm saying is, all I said was payoff space easier to measure than probability space.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. All right, so let's see. Where else can I go with this? If
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit narrow.
if in general people were to adopt your caution in regards to tradition, do you think this would change the world? Do you think this would matter?
Some countries, I think some countries are less careful, or some cultures are less careful than others about change, and while others, I think, so I think like in most areas, things would not be affected, but it's kind of like an urban thing, right? Or like a lot of urbanites think new is better automatically. Oh, some person said it.
Yep.
And this is the complete opposite of what I'm saying. And yeah, so of course, I think it would change a lot of things in cities, especially.
Okay. All right. Do you see people in cities versus people outside of cities? The city versus city mouse, country mouse, the rural kind of versus the metropolitan. Do you see a difference in approach in these two areas, and is on this question of retaining traditions?
Yeah. Well, I think city people are less used to having a close community. Like they don't, they like meeting new people, and like meeting new people is a big part of the culture in new cities. And rural people are more about, I have my group, and we're trying to make the group stable. We want people to stay here, stay together, stay united, that kind of thing. And there's a lot more unconditionality in the way you, like in cities, it's almost like shopping for friends. It's like, oh, this one I have a good time with, so I'm going to stay with. This one I don't have a good time with, so I'm not going to stay with. Well, this is not really the rural approach, right? The rural approach is, let's go to the cafe, sit down, you're my group, and it doesn't really, so there's a very big difference in the way you treat things. Of course, at the end of the day, cities are more innovative because of this. They try out more new ideas, but like, if you want to estimate the number of inventions which fail, it's something like 99.9%. So it's still, most of it is failure. Of course, maybe we do need cities anyway because we want that experimentation with new ideas and that kind of stuff. But a lot of the time, before the idea is really well tested and ready for, to do like minimal damage to other places, city people have a tendency to want to push it preemptively. And at the very least, if you adopted that approach, you would be a little more conservative, take it a bit more slow.
Okay. Cool. So, what kind of thing could you learn, hypothetically, not something you know today, that would raise your confidence that being careful about traditions is better for us in the long term?
Well, all you have to say that a tradition, like, as long as there are things that you can't make too many mistakes on in one lifetime, then it seems like traditions would be very useful. So, for instance, maybe like how many topics can you study at university? Like if you go and study, I don't know, something useless, it's very hard to go back and do the whole thing from scratch because you have income constraints and that kind of stuff. So there are a bunch of choices like that in life which are irreversible, and you can't actually learn on your own from experience. You have to rely on the failures and the successes of the past to figure out what worked and what didn't work. And same thing for like the way you have your relationship with your wife or whatever, your girlfriend. Maybe you shouldn't treat it that way because whatever. So there's a bunch of things that you can't do, that you can't learn on your own, that are not dispensable. So tradition is not dispensable in that way.
Okay. I have a very, very traditional marriage relative to the Old Testament. I have 2 wives. And I have a husband, which is not in the New Old Testament. Oh. So I'm trying things that are sort of against modern tradition. It's working out really well for me. Is that the kind of thing that's okay to try out? Or might there be knock-on effects?
No,
Am I violating the tradition about marriage?
Sorry, I can't say anything. As long as you see that it's very the payoff space is very bounded to yourself, then it's fine, right? As long as because you're experimenting, that's fine. Make sure that your experiment is not going to have knock-on effects.
It should be limited to my family. It seems that religious people don't agree that the knock-on effects are limited. Somebody else who's married in a different marriage. Religious folks strongly think there might be some larger knock-on effects. Well, sometimes they say things like, I think they believe it in a more fundamental way than that.
Well, if you were watching Fox News 10 years ago, you would think they were completely off track. They were saying, "Oh, but if they get gay marriage, then they're going to be trying to propagandize the schools." And 10 years ago, that sounded ridiculous, and now it sounds less ridiculous. So the knock-on effects are not just they may be larger than what it appears, because you can have if people, it's fine if you're doing something and it's private and that's all, but I think religious people are much more scared of like cultural phenomenon where they're going to try and impose things on a mass scale.
Indeed. Somebody asked to define the knock-on effect. Would you like to take a hack at defining knock-on effect? I'll be happy to give a go if you want.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sure you can do it.
Okay. I think knock-on effect is, it might be obvious to know what the direct effect of a thing is. If I eat food, I will become less hungry. The knock-on effect might be that I eat the wrong kind of food and I can't predict that it's going to have a bad effect on me. Or maybe it's not obvious that my eating this food prevents somebody else from eating and that causes an effect in them. Or maybe my eating of this food and its eggs has the strange knock-on effect of affecting chicken farmers because I purchased the eggs. I think knock-on effect is when you might see the obvious first order effect, but it's the second order effect, and if they end up having a significant effect, it's not obvious. We call that a knock-on effect.
The way the religious people teach this is with David and Goliath. They say David threw the rock at Goliath, and so the first effect is throwing out the rock. The first effect is the rock hitting Goliath. Second effect is is Goliath falling down, and that
Okay.
itself causes his army to run away and cower, and that causes the Jews to go after them and kill them. So it's kind of so it's kind of layers of one thing caused this, then that thing caused that, and that thing caused that.
Okay. All right. So unintended consequences. Yes. All right. Thank you, Dada. See you later. All right. So I guess I'm just going to summarize and say I see you saying that we need to be very careful to not lose the wisdom of history. That wisdom was hard fought, and we throw it away. If we throw it away, we have the peril that we will lose the less obvious things that come from it. And so, as a default, we should retain traditions until we fully understand them and end up replacing them with a better way to get to those same conclusions, those same answers. And our default should be to retain traditions first, and maybe only change small things at once. Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. I've enjoyed it. Do you have any questions for me on this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what's your take on it? I mean, I was surprised to see that as an option on the list. So, what were your previous experiences, and what's your take?
Yeah, I think that list was just kind of a brainstormed list of all the kinds of things that that people have talked about in SE, kind of unordered, and people,
Hey, how you doing?
hey,
Doing good?
we're doing very well. We are live streaming. Are you okay with being recorded?
Yes, I am.
Great. Would you get him a mask? Are you okay with wearing a mask for us?
Yes, I am.
Thank
Can
you.
I sit down?
Yes. Thank you, Dio. I'm going to turn it over to Reed. Yes? Is it you're up?
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Dio.
Cool.
I'm
Thanks.
going to switch to
See you
an
next
ultra
time.
wide, and we're going to swap questioners. Okay.